This is the Veterans Truth Network, and it's the web, and it is Monday, August 31st, 2015. I have three special guests. I've got Dr. John Waterman, who's a host here on the show. I've got Pastor Eli James, who's also a host on this network, not the show, but this network, both. And we have Joe, and we just don't use his last name. And we're going to have a roundtable discussion tonight on Hebrew versus Jew. Hebrew being good, the Jew being bad. And about God's chosen people. Actually, they're not God's chosen people, the Jews, but they're Satan's chosen ones. So, with that said, I'm going to start off with Eli here.
Right. Okay.
Eli, we're going to just have an open round table here tonight for the next hour. And folks, we're going to do this tomorrow night for 2 hours. And we're going to have the same thing, and by the time we get through 3 hours of good time here and understanding, maybe you'll understand the difference. That the Jews, yes, the Satanists, and the Hebrews are, well, they can be saved. But go ahead, Eli.
Well, the Bible specifically defines two categories of people. It's written to the Israelites, who were given the law, to whom applied the covenants, to whom applied the promises, and to whom Jesus came. Jesus said, I come not but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And even that word lost, when properly translated, means exiled. Now, he was referring to the 10 lost tribes. And the book of James was written to the 12 tribes of Israel scattered abroad. Greetings. So even in New Testament times, it was commonly understood that all 12 tribes existed, and even the Pharisees acknowledged the existence of the other 11 tribes, presuming they might be one tribe, which we're going to argue tonight that they're not. But presuming that the Jews are the tribe of Judah, that even the Pharisees, who were their leaders, acknowledged the existence of the other tribes in John 7:35, where Jesus said...
I think we need to... Eli, you started off saying Jews. Tell us the difference. Are Jews ancient Israelites? We need to define the word Jew right off the bat, because they don't know.
Yeah, well, absolutely not. Let me just finish. I was just going to mention John 7:35, where even the Pharisees, who are the originators of the religion called Judaism, acknowledged that that Jesus was talking about the scattered or dispersed other tribes of Israel. So even the Pharisees in Jesus Christ's day acknowledged that the other tribes still existed. Today, however, organized Jewry claims that those 12 tribes, those other tribes, don't exist. They just vanished into history and do not have a claim to the name of Israel. But that's not true. We're still here. We're called the Caucasian people. Now, getting back
that's interesting, Eli. What if they did say they vanished? That means they're not an Israelite either.
Well, yeah, what they claim is they're the only remaining, semblance or, the remnant of the 12 tribes, but that's just not true. They're not even Shemites, they're not even Israelites, they're not even Hebrews. But to answer your question, Doc, here's the difference. In the Old Testament, wherever you see the word Jew, it always is translated from the Hebrew word Yehudi. Yehudi simply means a Judahite, or a member of the tribe of Judah. Okay, it's very specific and exclusive. It doesn't include anybody else. It doesn't even include any of the other tribes. It's a word that only means the tribe of Judah. In the New Testament,
meaning from a region or from a particular race of
tribe,
people?
from a descendant of Judah, the person. Judah
the Israelite.
The Israelites, and anyone who descends from his two sons, Pharez and Zerah. The Bible is very clear about this. So there's no possible other definition.
So to clarify that for people, because you go over in so much detail, what you're saying is a Jew in the Old Testament is an Israelite or an ancient Israelite or not?
No. The word Jew is a false translation for Yehudi or Judah or Judahite. Okay. every tribe had its own designation. An Asherite was a member of the tribe of Asher. A Danite was a member of the tribe of Dan. A Judahite was a member of the tribe of Judah. And every tribe maintained its separate existence apart from the other 11 tribes. Okay. Now,
I knew that answer. I was just trying to make sure they got it.
Oh yeah, no. This is something that people need to understand. And most Christians don't understand these things because they're not taught these things. Okay. Now, in the New Testament, the word Jew is translated wherever you encounter it in the New Testament, it's always translated from the word Judeos. Judeos is a completely different noun. It means a citizen or a resident of the nation of Judea, and
meaning part of a region of a country, not necessarily from the tribe of Judah.
Exactly. Now in the New Testament, it's a territorial term, but in the Old Testament, it's a racial tribal term. There's a huge difference between the two. Okay, and it's just like saying, "Well, I'm a Chicagoan." Well, does that mean I'm a white Chicagoan or an Israelite Chicagoan or a black Chicagoan or a Mexican? I mean, that's the difference.
Right.
In the Old Testament, the word Jew exclusively refers to the tribe of Judah and to no other people. And in fact, the Old Testament differentiates between Judahites and Israelites in many places. Okay, so you cannot equate Judahite with Israelite, and this is a false designation that the Jews claim that they are Israelites. They are not. And now in the New Testament, and I'll make this as brief as I can. In the New Testament, we find there are two main groups of people living in Judea, which is a territorial term. We have the Judahites, who are the descendants of the tribe of Judah, and they comprise the major portion of the people. But you also have a very large proportion of Edomites, who are non-Israelites, but who are recently made citizens of Judea under John Hyrcanus, who was the king of Judah around 100 BC. He defeated the kingdom of Idumea, which means the kingdom of Edom, and he incorporated those people into his kingdom and made them citizens. So in other words, it is as we Americans conquered Mexico and brought all the Mexicans to America and made them citizens, which is what we're doing today, right? So these Edomites in no way, shape, or form could possibly be of the tribe of Judah. But these are the people who today claim to be Judah, these Edomites, okay? And this is verified by all of the ancient writings of the time. And these people are the people who began the religion called Judaism. As the Jewish Encyclopedia itself admits, Judaism was created by the Pharisees, not by Moses. They admit these things in their own writings. Okay? So that, I think, would be a good introduction. And any questions or comments, could follow from here.
Joe, you want to jump in here?
Well, it's pretty much what Eli has said, except my contribution to this conversation is that I fast forward, and Eli has spoken on this on many occasions, and so has Don, and that is beginning with the Khazars, and that is where I believe your modern Jew comes from. And the language that they developed early on is when they were introduced to Talmudism, as Eli has stated on several occasions. He decided to take the Hebrew letters that he saw and created the language called Yiddish. And out of that, through the centuries, wherever they went, they always had the common language of Yiddish. And out of that came the word Jew. And what I believe happened is that around 1775, by that time, the Jews had control of the banking systems of England and Europe. They also owned the printing presses. And so when the United States was becoming the United States, and there were more of a population here, they decided that they needed more King James versions of the Bible. And what they did was what I call a coup d'etat. I believe it's brilliant. They substituted the word Jew, which is really a Yiddish word. From there, you can verify that if you could ever go to a museum and look at the old Geneva Bible, you will not find the word Jew in their New Testament. The word is Yusi. And so what they did is to substitute that word, which would legitimize themselves later in the future times to the reconquering of Palestine for themselves. So if you take Yiddish, there is not one Hebrew word in it. If you take Hebrew, there's not one Yiddish word in it.
That's correct. That's correct.
And so what they've done, I think it was a brilliant coup d'etat on their part. They were brilliant on this. And so I believe that it was, and Don would be familiar with this, particularly when it becomes...
Water. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When it becomes... yeah, right.
John Waterman. Dr.
Yeah.
Doc Waterman, yeah.
Doc Waterman. So
Right.
what I think was, this word, I believe, was chosen very carefully. And what it did is in the future time, to bring about confusion. Because you could never really identify who these Khazars really were. Well, it was finally substantiated with Elik's investigation into the genetics of the Jews in Israel today, and they are all descendants of the Khazars. So I call it the great coup d'etat.
Yeah.
One word.
Yeah, right. It's a misidentification. Let me comment because I would say that you're 99% correct here, or 95% correct, because the Jews of, I call it Israel, because they're not Israelites. And they're a synagogue of Satan, and they're deceiving the whole world by masquerading as Israel. But Joel, you're absolutely right. 95% of those Jews in the Israeli state today are of Khazar descent. These people, known as the Khazars, and that's the Ashkenazi branch of Judaism, they converted to Judaism in the year 740 AD. Their ethnic background does not place them anywhere near Israel in any point in their history. They are primarily of Turkish, Mongol, and Japhetic stock, all mixed together. None of the Khazar people ever set foot in ancient Israel. They have no religious, ethnic, or biblical connection to ancient Israel whatsoever. They simply converted to Judaism in 740 AD. All of their encyclopedic articles admit this. All major encyclopedias have articles on this proving it, and it's an incontestable fact, as you just stated. Now, the problem is the Sephardic Jews. Who are the Sephardic Jews? The other 5%. Now, they actually lived in Palestine in the days of Christ, but they are not Israelites either. The Palestinian Sephardic Jews come from these Edomites, who I just explained who they were. They're the people that became citizens of Judea. They were not of the tribe of Judea, but they became citizens of Judea and created a new religion, and Jesus Christ accused them of violating the traditions of Moses and creating their own tradition, which is called Judaism today. And Jesus Christ never spared a moment to criticize them and condemn them for their false teachings. And the Jewish Encyclopedia admits that Judaism today is a direct result of the teachings of these very same Pharisees. So you have two groups of Jews, the Ashkenazi, 95% of whom have no Shemitic ancestry whatsoever, and the 5% of Sephardic Jews whose ancestors were in Palestine, but even they do not have any Israelite ancestry. So what we see here, the Jewish people are total imposters impersonating the people of Israel, and they've been doing so for the last 2,000 years.
Well, I'm in total agreement with you because you connected the dots, and I'll just comment on that because I believe in the curse of Edom, Esau, and what happened with the Edominians, because they were the worshipers of the tradition of the elders, where they had put their chubby checker twist on it and did it to their own convenience, meaning I'm going to get my mother's money no matter what.
Right.
And so what happened is that that curse that was put on them, because, as you have stated before, Esau married into the Canaanites, and he was asked not to do that, and he did. And because he did that, that curse was put on him. And Eli, I believe that curse was passed on to the Khazars.
Well, yeah, because they adopted the religion.
Yep, and through that curse continued on. And it includes the curse of Decide. Let his blood be upon us. That is also carried on because it was transferred through their Talmudism.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, the Jewish Encyclopedia states very clearly that the religion of Judaism comes from the Pharisees. And throughout the last 2,000 years, the Jewish religion has preserved the tradition of the Pharisees unchanged.
Yes, absolutely.
So that the Judaism of today is exactly the same Judaism that the Pharisees created starting around 100 BC, just before the days of Christ. And the Jewish Encyclopedia admits this.
Yes.
It openly admits it.
And what you've done, Eli, is to clarify about the Sephardic Jew, because even though he has Semitic blood in him, he carries that curse of the Edominians.
That's right. That's right.
And the curse of Decide, which is, let his blood be upon us, when Pilate said, who do you want, Barabbas or Jesus? And they said, give us Barabbas. And that's when they said, let his blood be upon us and for generation after generation. In other words, they rejected God.
That's right. Well, the Son of God, they reject the Messiah.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting theological point, because most Christians simply do not understand what happened when the Pharisees agitated the crowd against Jesus and agitated that crowd into a frenzy of wanting to kill Jesus. Okay? Simply do not understand. Because Jesus was not a member of the Idumean tribe. He was a Judahite. But these Pharisees were Edomites, not Israelites of the tribe of Judah. This is what most people do not understand.
Now, Eli, I have a theory on that, and that is, I don't believe any of the royalty was left in Jerusalem at the time, except for up around Galilee, which was Joseph and Mary. I don't believe that there was any royalty left. They became polluted from Esau Edom.
Well, no, you're right. They were actually assassinated. Herod the Edomite, who was the son of Antipater the Edomite, let me just quickly rehearse the history here. Antipater was an Edomite who befriended John Hyrcanus, who was the last real Judahite king of Judea. Antipater bribed Julius Caesar with a great sum of money. This is recorded in Josephus. to place his son Herod as the ruler of Galilee. When Herod became ruler of Galilee, he and Mark Antony invaded Jerusalem and Judea and dethroned the son of John Hyrcanus. And then Herod assassinated all of the remaining family of John Hyrcanus and assassinated the Judahite Sanhedrin and replaced them with his Edomite friends.
Yes.
This is all recorded in Josephus.
And Josephus, exactly.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so that's
so you're absolutely right. There were no Judahite kings left. There weren't any left. But Jesus would have been one. Jesus would have been the heir to the throne. That's why Herod wanted to kill him.
Exactly. And so what you have done is, by bringing out the curse of Esau and the Edominians, that was transferred again, let me say this again, to the Khazars when they decided to adopt, King Bulan decided to adopt Judaism and looked at the Talmud, saw the Hebrew letters, and then adapted that to his language, which then became Yiddish.
Yes,
Thus,
right.
The word Jew became, again, I think it was a brilliant coup d'etat on their part. When they inserted that into the King James Version of the Bible, it seemingly legitimized them as the chosen people, so that when they went back to reclaim or to take the land, which now is called Israel, it gave them the psychological, cultural, seeming credibility to go do this. I think it was brilliant on their part.
It's linguistic trickery.
Yes.
And they have foisted the word Jew upon the world. It's very, very subtle. You have to understand, just as I tried to explain earlier, America was created by white men, not by Indians, and not by Mexicans and not by blacks. But today we have Afro-Americans. Now, they all fall under the umbrella of the word American, but America was created by whites, not by blacks, not by Mexicans, not by Indians. Okay? Yes. And that's the difference between the Judahites of the Old Testament and the Judeans of the New Testament. The Judeans of the New Testament were a multicultural group, and the ruling group was the Edomites, who had taken over all the positions of authority, just as today we have Jews taking authority in America.
Exactly.
The same thing happened then. Okay.
I'd like to kind of get back to some of the ancient history, too, before we escape this part of the world.
We can't escape it. The whole world is cursed by the Middle East.
I like to look at it from the standpoint of biological or biologics. Precisely by that I mean genetics.
Okay.
A long time ago, we had Adam, who was created without the ability to die. Then came along this dude that we call Lucifer or Satan.
Yeah.
Which,
in the Hebrew,
right? Which brought about what we call the fall, colloquially called the fall, which resulted in sin entering the life of Adam, which then resulted, of course, then is ultimately the worst part of it was death. We didn't have death. So there was a redemption process.
Race would not have had death.
A redemption process.
Eve not sinned. Yes. Okay. Go ahead.
There was a redemption process that had been laid out for Adam because, unlike Lucifer, he did not have this idea of rebellion against God that caused death from inside of him. It was placed in him by Lucifer, so to speak.
Right.
As Lucifer is the author of this whole mess. Mm-hmm. He was only responsible and consequently, apparently, had the bailiff start delivering him to be ending his potential at all of ever being redeemed. In other words, Adam got help falling into sin. So the Father gave him a redemption plan.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the redemption plan was given to Adam and all, it says, to Adam and all of his seed, physical seed, not spiritual seed, but physical seed.
Literal descendants.
And since Eve was of Adam, she was made from him, she inherited this redemption plan.
That's right.
This then created something very interesting about being saved, as a lot of people call it, okay? Being saved, spiritually saved, was locked into something. You had to be spawned by the Adamic race in order to be offered the chance at redemption. Now, you can refuse it, but to even get the offer, you better be from a descendant of Adam. So that's why when you follow the genetics in Scripture, like I like to do, you end up going from Adam to Noah, which says, in the Bible that he was perfect in his generations. And so many of these preachers start talking about Noah was so pious and godly, he prayed 14 times a day on his face, and God really thought that was good, and he was a blessing of a man. He was a very pious, blah, blah, blah. And that he's going to be saved because of his piousness. No, it says he was saved because of his generations being perfect. His genetics was not polluted with fallen angel seed. Now, why do I say fallen angel seed? Because it says in Genesis that there was going to be a war between the seed of Adam and the seed of Satan or Lucifer, but those two would physically fight each other on this planet. This was not some demon sitting on your shoulder trying to say to you, although I'm not saying that can't happen. But this was not, the fight that he was talking about was not the kind where it says there's these spirits running around trying to make you fall into sin. The fight that was inferred there with the seed of Satan, seed of Adam, was a physical one. We were talking flesh. Seeds aren't spiritual. There are spiritual seeds. But we jump forward to show that this is not spiritual when we go to Christ's time. When you guys, like when you were talking, he was pointing his finger in their face, saying, you are of not your father. Your father is not Abraham, meaning physically seed, physical seed of Abraham. You are of your father, Satan, which meant you are seeded by the devil. Right. So this means this. I want to clarify this really important theological point. The people that we call Jews today, which are not ancient Israelites, but are descendants of fallen angels, cannot be saved through the redemption plan given to Adam because it's locked in the genetic plan given to only the Adamic race. Now, there may be some secret code out there they've got that I don't know about, but I haven't been told that. My scripture tells me that fallen angels have been judged, found guilty,
already been
judged.
And
that's it. Period. It's over.
Right. They've already been condemned.
So we have an Adamic race on this planet at war with what you would call today's Jew, the folks in Israel today, the Khazarians, and a few little sprinklings of Sephardic people, and you've got them not inheriting the offer of redemption. In other words, they cannot be forgiven. They cannot be redeemed. Now, maybe a blessing to them would be, on the other hand, where it says, if you bless Israel, you'll be blessed. If they bless us, true Israelites, life on this planet for them will be halfway decent. Now, beyond that, I don't know what to say. All I know is they will not inherit the kind of redemption that was promised to Adam because they're not of the Adamic race.
Right.
Now, that's one thing I always wanted to get clear. They cannot be saved, period. Now, that does not mean... Now, let me go one more step in this discussion about genetics, because this is really important. And I'm not a genetic expert, but I've had enough books shoved in front of my face getting my doctorate to know this. Not all racehorses, if you put all the racehorses in the world, a great big giant racetrack, there's going to be one winner. There might be a tie, but not all racehorses are the best racehorse, are they? There's going to be a last place horse somewhere. Mm-hmm. So Jews don't all act like the devil. At the very epitome of what the devil describes as vicious, horrible, awful, nasty, and then we could go through a whole list of very, very nefarious activities that Lucifer is up to, and it's disgusting what they are.
Yes,
versions. We have kinds of lying, murdering, and all kinds of stuff, but Jews act as bad as that. Mm-hmm. Because genetics, with the sprinkling of other races into this Khazarian race, it has kind of mellowed that racehorse down, especially if you cross it with maybe a draft horse. They're not so fast anymore. But that does still not mean, that still does not mean they can inherit the Adamic covenant. It just means they don't behave. Not all Jews behave like hell, is what I'm saying. But it does mean that they cannot, any of them, inherit the Adamic covenant.
That's right.
So we have behavior, but what we generally see is, so to speak, the hellish cream comes to the top, and they cast a lot of problems alone. I mean, if it's only half of them doing this, half alone could cause problems. So that's where I wanted to leave that.
Yeah. Let me answer your question or comment as briefly as possible, and I'll turn it back over to Joel. First of all, the curse, the first curse in the Bible is in Genesis 3:15, where it declares the enmity, that is hatred, between two groups of people, namely the descendants of Cain and the descendants of Eve. It's very clear. And then Genesis 4 talks about the descendants of Cain and who they are, and it gives us their genealogy. And then in Genesis chapter 5, it gives us the genealogy of the descendants of Seth, who was the replacement for Abel. Now, these two seed lines have been kept separate and have been eternal enemies with one another throughout all of Scripture. The Scriptures clearly identify whose side, which tribe, and which group is on. Okay? But the churches don't teach this. So you can trace the line of descent through Seth, and you can trace the line of descent through Cain. And through Cain married into the seed line called the Canaanites. The Canaanites, who Yahweh ordered the Israelites to exterminate, but they failed to do so. And then those Canaanites were married into by Esau, who we talked about earlier, the Esau Edomites, who created the nation of Edom. These Edomites were the enemies of the Israelites. And the Bible totally condemns these Edomites as the people that Yahweh hates. And the book of Obadiah and several other books openly declare, and Paul affirms this in Galatians. He affirms it in Galatians that these Edomites are the people of God's curse, not his blessing. They are the people of God's curse. So all you have to do is trace the Kenites, who are the descendants of Cain, through the Canaanites, through the Edomites, to the Pharisees, who are the originators of the religion called Judaism, and you know who the synagogue of Satan is simply by tracing their descent.
That's how you get there. What I was referring to was Genesis 3:15, where it says, "I will put enmity between thee
hatred
and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed." And it's referring to Lucifer or Satan in his seed.
Yes, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
we literally have this movie, almost hard to comprehend scenario occurring today, and it's real hard for today's contemporary Christian to get their mind wrapped around it, because somewhere along the line, and I don't know where it really got epidemic, we've lost certain fundamental knowledge. It's kind of like the founding fathers really never thought there would ever be a problem having to define marriage as between a man and a woman, right?
Right, exactly.
It was, and in this war that we're talking about, it was so common it was so well known, so commonly known, that why would you ever think you'd have to define it? Well, it's defined at least enough for us to understand. Yeah. There's literally a war going on between two races of people, not between humanity. We've got to throw out that humanity word, because it really messes stuff up. And I always like to try and stay away from they did this, and really when we say these words, when I say these words, Jew does not mean ancient Israelite. No. Jew does not mean Adamic man. So we have this genetic propensity to act like our daddy, and this is bringing up some more contemporary stuff that we can get into later. But isn't it kind of strange, fellas? We've had like Clinton, we don't know who his daddy is. And we've got Barack Obama, and we don't know who his daddy is. So we have a bunch of people that have been leaders of this country, placed there, of course, by the Jew, through a process they control now, and ends up that we don't even know who their daddies are. Except if you want to get into the dynasty of the Bushes, then we've got a whole nother... Right.
Well, let me just quickly comment and turn it over to Joel, because he's been patiently waiting. Let me just
keep
say...
on going, Eli.
Okay, well, the genealogy of the Canaanite or the Kenite seed line through the Canaanites and through the Edomites is clearly stated in Scripture. And these Edomites have always been the enemies of the Israelites. And they're in Ezekiel chapter 36, it tells us that the Edomites will attempt to impersonate the Israelites. And that's what they did when they became part of the nation of Judea under John Hyrcanus. When Antipater...
And that's that thing he's talking... That's where he was talking about this perfect coup.
Right.
Perfect.
Well, the Jews have been doing this throughout history ever since that day, invading countries, pretending to be members or citizens of that country, and then proceeding to subvert it by infiltration and sabotage. They've been doing this throughout history.
They do a lot of name changing for a lot of reasons.
They do.
Now I gotta admit, I get attacked all the time. They call me a Jew, not Israelite, because of my this name of Waterman. But Jews don't meet their brides to be at games where you're throwing telephone poles around, which is where I met my bride.
Yeah. Right, right. But here,
because Jews can't throw telephone poles around.
No, and the curse of Edom that is repeated in many books of the Bible is actually repeated by Yahshua Messiah, Jesus Christ, in two places very specifically in the New Testament. In John chapter 8, verse 44, which you already brought up, because he tells these children of the devil that they are the children of the devil, and they're not Israelites. And in Matthew chapter 23, where he accuses them to their faces that they are guilty of the deaths of all of the Hebrew prophets, going all the way back to Abel.
Man,
now this is not a spiritual accusation.
Interesting that isn't that interesting that Abel's considered that?
Yes. Well, who killed Abel?
Well,
who killed Abel?
The devil.
It was Cain. Cain. He's telling these Pharisees that they are the literal children, descendants of Cain. It can't be any clearer.
What did it say right in the Bible in Genesis 2:23? He beguiled me.
That's right.
That's what
and beguiled means seduced, Stu, and you can't seduce somebody without involving sex. At least this was the last time I checked.
Right, and then they had to wear loincloths over their genital areas. They weren't given face masks or dunce caps. They were given loincloths, and Eve's womb was cursed with pain and childbirth because it was a sexual sin.
You mean they weren't given 3 monkeys cover the eyes, ears, and the mouth, or anything like that?
Well, that's for the Christians and the Judeo-Christians of today's world, and the liberals too. The people who are still totally deceived. Now, I just want to bring up Revelation 2:9, 3:9, and 12:9. Those 3 verses prove that there is a group of people in the world today who call themselves Jews or who claim to be Judah, but are not, and are the synagogue of Satan.
That's pretty strong stuff there.
And who have deceived the whole world. Folks, read those 3 verses for yourself. Who in the world is today is claiming to be Judah and is not?
Now let's go to...
Well, you know this.
Go ahead, John.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, John.
I was just going to say that the Islamic people call America
the great
today,
Satan.
but and it fits well, but not because of the people of America called Anglo-Saxon, Israelite, Celtic, and blah, blah, blah. Not because of the Adamic people, but because the policies of America are coming from the Babylonians.
From the ADL, AIPAC, American Jewish Congress, American Jewish Committee, etc., etc.
Exactly.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
Exactly.
Here. Yes. Thank you, Joel. This is the one episode from Josephus I wanted to quote because I want people to understand. First of all, Josephus was not a Jew. Josephus was a Judahite. There's a huge difference between a racially pure Judahite of the tribe of Judah and a mixed, and everybody knows the Jews are a mixed race people. You have Oriental Jews, you have black Jews, you have Arab Jews, you have Israeli Jews, you have some white Jews. The Jews are all mixed up, but the Judahites of the Old Testament were one specific group of people who fought to the death any invader who tried to mix them with outsiders. This is biblical history.
That's right.
Okay, and Josephus.
They've infiltrated all these systems all this time, haven't they? Joe's been really accurate in how they came and
right.
this silly admiralty law stuff. I mean, this is, well, let me put it this way. They have an affinity for what I call the Babylonian or Talmudic loophole. Mm-hmm. So if a Jew isn't a lawyer already, he's got one nearby. You can almost guarantee it.
Right. Yeah. In fact, there's a compilation on the internet of black rappers in praise of their Jewish lawyers who get them off of the charges they face, right? Because what's rap music, gangster rap? It's all anti-white, it's anti-establishment, it's anti-police. They promote rape, murder, and killing police officers, right? And they all have Jewish lawyers to defend them in court. So we know who's promoting gangster rap. It's the Jews.
Well,
okay?
It's not like this would be a perfect nation if this was a racially pure Anglo-Saxon world. We can create enough trouble on our own. There's no doubt about it. It doesn't mean that we are right just because we are white. It means we get an opportunity to be redeemed if we so choose to invoke that with our free will. Otherwise, we're just we're going to die too. I mean, we inherited it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, the fact is, I mentioned this earlier on the Clay Douglas show today, Ezekiel chapter 37 and 38, declares the invasion by Gog and Magog would be against a land of unwalled cities.
Okay. Oh, that's not Israel.
Oh, that can't be the Israeli state. Can't be Palestine.
I say that because, Joe, how many times have you heard the churches today saying, "Oh, they're going to go attack Israel over there"? Well, they're going to have to knock a few walls down to get to them, right?
Well, let me throw in something here. It's a little bit different, but I think it's very important, and that is the word dispensationalism. And again, it is the brilliancy of their coup. And dispensationalism really goes back, and this is where you get into the rapture and things like that, but I find this very interesting because dispensationalism really traces itself back to Ignatius of Loyola, who, remember, when he converted, he was a Jew.
That's right.
And he did not give it up. I should put that in there. But anyway, he brought about a fellow Jew because the Catholic Church was under attack from their misuse of not dispensationalism, but what's the word I'm looking for, where you give money and then you're forgiven your sins.
Oh, yeah. I know exactly. Yeah, right.
Yeah, in other words,
indulgences.
Indulgences, thank you.
Yes.
All right. So what happened is that he brought one of his colleagues by the name of Francisco Ribera, and he was also a Jesuit doctor of theology. And what he did is to work up a plan so that the Catholic Church wouldn't receive the blame that was being put on them by the Protestants, and that it would be in the future. And this was called futurism. And it is called Evangelistica Apocalypsian Commentary, also called futurism. Now that was picked up then by a guy by the name of Manuel de Lacunza, a Jesuit from Chile, also known as Juan ben Ezra. And then it was picked up by an Englishman by the name of Edward Irving. And he put it together into English in 1827, and he called it The Messiah in Glory. From there, and Eli will be familiar with this, it was picked up by a man by the name of John Nelson Darby.
Darby.
Right. All right?
Good old Darby.
Yeah.
Then we come to the big guy. The big guy that was to influence all the evangelical movement at the time, and his name was Schofield.
Right.
And he came up with the Schofield Bible. But here's where you get the connection between the Schofield Bible and who really did the Schofield Bible.
Right.
Because Schofield was not that literate. He met up with a man by the name of Samuel Udmeyer. Ever hear of him?
Zionist.
These guys are brilliant.
Yes.
And Darby was introduced to the Council of Six. Well, we can guess that might include people like Paul Warburg and some of these other guys, right?
Yeah, Zionist Jews, yes.
That's right. And Absolutely. So what they did is they began to insert prophecy into certain chapters of the Bible.
Right.
Which
Commentary.
Was,
yes.
And then from there you find the founding of Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena, and you find Dallas Theological Seminary in Dallas, Texas, and their whole foundation is dispensationalism.
Right, which assumes that the Jews are the Israelites of the Old Testament.
That's right. And this is a very important point because our friend, not our friend, but people like John Hagee base their entire support of Israel
paycheck
on
too.
dispensationalism. In other words, it legitimized the creation of Israel.
Israeli state, yes. Well, here, let me back up just a little before Schofield, because I'm going to verify 100% what you just said.
We have a minute and a half left, guys.
Up until the creation of the Schofield Reference Bible, Christians and Jews hated one another. There was no such thing as Judeo-Christianity. Christians universally hated Jews, and Jews universally hated Christians. That's why the Jews were kept in ghettos. The Christians understood that the Jews were the Christ killers. There was no such thing as Judeo-Christianity. Schofield invented it.
Got it.
Yeah. That's real history, folks.
And that's why I call them the coup d'etat boys.
That's right. It's an intellectual coup d'etat, hiring Schofield to rewrite the Bible, reinterpret it, and then the Jews used their money, power, and influence to influence. And another one of these theological seminaries was Moody Bible Institute right here in Chicago. Yes. Okay.
Well, they're experts at installing push governments,
That's right. Exactly.
We're pretty much out of time for tonight. We're going to pick this up tomorrow. Hebrew versus Jew. The Hebrews being real humans, and the Jews being Satan's
children. Satan's children.
Going to be exactly. Now I got to throw this in real quick, folks. We're having a fundraiser this month. We need $1,600 because we bought some more equipment. And come to the archives.
Very necessary equipment. Yes.
$3 a month, folks. For the archives, you get everybody's show. So we're almost out of time here. We're right down to the next 30 seconds. So I'm just going to ask you to come to Veterans Truth Network, get on the donation button, and we'll be here tomorrow night, folks, continuing this discussion of the Hebrew versus the Jew. And we're going to get everybody's mind changed and hopefully get the Christian minds throughout the world.
It's the Christians who need to hear this the most. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. What times do?
Tomorrow night from 7 to 9 p.m. Central Time or 8 to 10 Eastern. We're out of time. Thank you all three. Eli James, Dr. John Waterman, both hosts on this network, and Joel, I appreciate it. Talk to you tomorrow night.